In this chapter, we will talk about objects and some of its properties, the JavaScript object notation, popularly known as JSON, array implementation in JavaScript, and some properties and functions that work on arrays. This chapter and the following ones should be quite interesting to people who come from a C or C-type language background. So let's start. JavaScript provides a general object data type, which is basically an unordered collection of properties. And each property has a name and value. The property names are strings, and values associated with a property may be anything. It could be a primitive type of value or another object. Alright? Let's understand with the help of an example. Open the console window in your browser and type in var car is equal to open curly brace. Then we write the name of a property, say color, then a colon, and now we need to write the value for the color. So let it be red, which is a string. So we need to wrap it with single or double quotes. And then we close the brace. Alright? And that's our JavaScript object. Note a couple of things. As said earlier, property names are just strings. So color is a string or sequence of characters. And there is no need to put it in double quotes, alright? Because it's a name of a property of an object, so JavaScript knows that it is a string. But if you want, you can go ahead and put the property name within quotes, but it's not required. The value of this property, which is a string, however, must be put within quotes, because JavaScript wouldn't know the data type of a value otherwise, because the value can be anything. So we can't write red without the quotes, alright? And what if we have more properties in an object? Say a car has a color and the name of the model. Well, that's quite easy. We just put multiple property value pairs separated by commas like this. So a property and value is separated by a colon, and each of the pairs is separated by commas. Alright? So if you are familiar with some other languages like Python, this object data structure is pretty much like a dictionary. Alright? Of course, there are differences, but just the data part looks pretty much like a dictionary. Finally, if we want to create an empty object, we can do it like this. Just open and close curly braces. Now, if we evaluate the value of empty, it's an object without any properties. Another way to create an object is by using the new keyword. Let's create the car object again. And we can say var car, which declares a variable named car, and we can initialize it with a new object. Note that we are using a capital O here, alright? So if we evaluate car, the interpreter says that it is an object, of course, an empty object. And how do we add properties? We can just say car.color is equal to red and car.model is equal to whatever. So now if we eval car, you can see these properties getting added to the object. So in JavaScript, we don't have to write classes the way we do in languages like C++, Java and C#. And JavaScript does support object orientation, but it is not class based. Rather, it is prototype based. And we will see that a little later. But the important point to remember is that in JavaScript, you can just create objects without writing any classes. Actually, there are no classes in JavaScript. An object is just a collection of properties, each property having some value, alright? One more way to create objects, which is meant for slightly advanced usage, is to use object.create method, alright? So we can say var x is equal to object.create and pass null as argument to this method. Alright. For most cases, using the new keyword or creating object literals using curly braces suffice. and object.create is useful if you have complex inheritance hierarchies. For now, just know that the create method takes some arguments, and if you want to create an empty object, just pass null to it. Passing argument is mandatory to this method. So if you don't pass any argument, you will get an error. Alright? But my suggestion is that in the beginning, you can just use the other two ways of creating objects. You can use the first approach if you know the values of all the properties upfront.